Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Ethan Nash, and with me today, as per usual,
Dad Nash, Mike Nash. Glad to be here, buddy.
Dad Nash, aka Mike Nash. Yeah, glad to be here as well. Folks, dear listeners of the podcast, this is a very exciting episode for us. Hopefully for you as well, maybe more for us than you. But this is episode number 100 of the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. So you know what? You know what that deserves? I will tell you. A round of applause. Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
everybody.
folks.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Isn't this cool,
You
though?
know what else this deserves? A celebration, dude.
Yeah?
100 episodes. When did we start? You know roughly time, date?
I could go back and just look, but I think it was 2018? 2019?
Right. And didn't
One
you
of
tell me
those,
one
so.
time, recently you said something about like the average podcast has X amount of episodes. Like, what was that? Do you remember that?
Yeah, something along the lines of like the app, most like 90% of podcasts that start out don't make it past episode number 3.
Whoa.
And of the 10% remaining, only like 90% of those make it past episode number 10. So we
like
are
we're in like a 1%?
Yeah, something like that. We are
Whoa.
or like the 0.1%. So we've
Wow.
persevered, and quite frankly, it's been kind of easy. This has been a really fun project over the last 5 years or however long it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, cheers to that.
Cheers.
Clink.
What are you drinking, bud?
I have just a beer. Just regular old beer. I've only had a few sips and I'm already slurring my words. Regular old beer is what I was trying to say.
Awesome.
And what do you have?
I'm having an old fashioned.
Very good. Folks, the reason why we have alcoholic beverages today is because it's episode number 100, and we always drink when we record podcasts.
Especially like right now at 8 a.m. It's the perfect time.
Yeah. No, just kidding, everybody. We don't typically drink when we record our podcast, and it's not 8 a.m. It is almost 5. So we're socially acceptable human beings for the most part.
No judgment.
But we're going to do a fun, just kind of different episode today, everybody. Given that it is a big moment for us, episode number 100, we decided we're going to have kind of a random show. We're going to get off our normal script about talking about management and leadership and organizational development and just ask each other some kind of random questions, some shallow, light, easy questions, some deep questions. So we're just going to have some fun with this. We each prepared a list of questions to ask each other, far more than we'll have time to get through. Haven't necessarily prepared for all of these questions, so we're just flying by the seat of our pants here. So you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it. Who's starting? You're starting, right?
I'll start out with a question. So, Mike, Dad.
Yes, son. Ethan.
Knowing what you know now that you have 4 adult kids, what advice would you give to new parents who really want to be the best parent they can be? Asking for a friend.
Wow, that's kind of a touchy question given the fact that, I remember meeting you back when you were a minute old, and I've been your parent this whole time, and where have I gone wrong and where have I gone right? You turned out awesome, so I must have done something right. But there are things that I would have liked to have done differently. I would say if I was giving parents if I had one piece of advice, and of course I'd have tons, but if I had one, it would be something about, well, I guess I would say go watch the films Inside Out and
Hmm.
Inside Out 2, and get I'd say get really comfortable with your own emotions as a human. I'd say I mean, pre-parent, before you have
Mhm.
kids, work on getting really comfortable and knowing your emotions and being okay with your emotions, so that you can give your kids the message that their emotions are good, that you would see, as parents, I think that we tell our kids who they are in lots of ways, and we help them see their goodness. And I was raised by a generation, and there's just this idea that, kids were supposed to be controlled, and their emotions weren't supposed to get in the way of life, and you had to, make them not cry or not tantrum, or this or that. And I watch your sister parent, and I just see how good she is at, saying to her little guy, man, you've got such big feelings. And so I would advise parents to um, empathize with their kids' feelings, and help your kids recognize and identify their feelings, and help and actually feel with them. That's what empathy is. One of the main way that we learn how to regulate our own emotions is because our parents helped us regulate our emotions, and it wasn't by villainizing our emotions or making us feel bad about our emotions. It's actually by making us feel good about our emotions, and helping us learn how to regulate, right? Helping us learn how to self-soothe, that sort of thing. So I would say watch out for your need for control around this area, and teach your kids how to love their emotions. What do you think, Ethan?
I think that's pretty cool. I think that's really probably good advice. I'm a parent to a dog, and I
Right?
apply this concept with my parenting with my dog.
Do
All
you?
your emotions, let's accept them. In fact, I'm going to howl with you. Um, so no, I
You
get
say,
it.
Carmen, Carmen, you have such big emotions.
Such big emotions all the time. It's okay. Actually, no, I appreciate that answer. It made me wonder if there's some parallels between this advice and advice with managing, leading others. Now, I want to be careful of here. I'm not trying to make the direct comparison that parent children, manager employee relationships are the exact same, but just with the idea, the concept of being okay with emotions, accepting them, empathizing with them, and being careful of the control
Hmm.
there. And
Hmm.
so I don't know, I might be drawing lines that should be erased, but
No,
I
no,
don't
I
know.
think you're in some ways, yeah, and to not be shaming people for how they feel. I think you're absolutely, and you're right. Watching out for control, of course, with adults, we assume by now they can have self control, and they can choose the right behaviors. For little ones, that's really hard for them to separate. So we have to be quite a bit more
Mhm.
patient, and provide them with more of that nurturing and empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, certainly the lesson of empathy
yeah, for sure,
applies.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about management stuff.
Yeah, let's move on. Let me ask you one of the deeper ones I had, and it's slightly related because it's about authenticity. I've been thinking a lot about authenticity in the last few years, so I want to
Hmm.
ask you about the idea of showing up authentically in a relationship. Um, First of all, um, Ethan, how important is authenticity in a relationship? And this is kind of a two-part question. And is there such a thing as too much? Right? How do you find that? How do you find that balance?
Hmm. Yeah, authenticity is a weird thing, right? And I think everybody has different ideas or definition of what authenticity is or means to them. I mean, I think my gut feeling response to this is like, yes, there is times when too much authenticity is too much, dependent upon the relationship. right? So maybe part of this is that we need to define which relationships there could be too much authenticity. And, maybe to frame this, I would say that the definition that I've come to really like for authenticity, I heard this through Adam Grant, is something along the lines of when your values and behaviors and actions are all aligned with each other. Right?
I like that.
So with that definition, under that definition, I might say, no, I don't think there can be too much authenticity in a relationship. Here is truly at my core what I value, and therefore this is how I want to show up, how I am aiming to show up in all of my relationships. So in that sense, maybe no. And maybe taking a different definition that I hear people use for authenticity is just being your true self, your candid self. I think the answer is yes, there can be too much. For example, do I really need to share with everybody how I feel about them in every moment?
Right.
I don't think so. In fact,
Please don't.
very few of us probably do that, or we wouldn't have a whole lot of relationships.
Right.
So I think there could be, in that sense, a bit too much. I think that one way to think about this is that, somebody might say something like, well, why didn't you share your feelings about that person? That wasn't very authentic of you. And I might push back and say, well, actually, isn't it authentic that I would have the self control not to share something that I feel would hurt somebody's feelings in an unnecessary way?
Because that's in line with your
Right?
values.
Because that's aligned with my values to
Right.
show, to show love in the world, for example.
I love that.
So I don't know. Those are some rambling thoughts about that.
I love that.
But I think if we say, hey, authenticity is expressing everything you feel and what you think, it's like that is not a way to build strong relationships, right? We all have this crazy mind that, comes up with all sorts of thoughts and stories and things like that. And if authenticity is identifying with all of your thoughts and then saying that is me and who I am and how I think and what I want to express, I don't think that's a healthy way to approach life, as opposed to saying, hey, I might have these feelings and thoughts about this person, but these are feelings and thoughts. Let me decide and make the choice of what I want to do with these feelings and thoughts. That
That's
to me
really
feels
good.
more authentic.
Yeah, I love that. And that what you just said circles back to the first part of what you said. Let me be authentic in terms of who's the real me. What are my real values? Not
Yeah.
what I happen to be thinking when I'm hangry or whatever. So that's really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And part of that could be, who do I strive to be? Even if I'm not exactly that person all the time, right? I am at least striving to be this person. So when I behave in a way of what I aim for, yeah, that feels authentic.
Well, and that's because that's still your values, right? What you're aiming toward is your values. So wow, love it.
Speaking
Beautiful.
of values, what is one or two of your core values?
Core values. Yeah, we've in Nash Consulting, we've done some exercises around that lately. I've done some with a client lately. I would say that a couple of my core values, probably near the top is kindness. And I mean, this sounds overly self-deprecating, but again, I obviously I don't always live up to that value, but I think that it is really, really important to me that we bring kindness and gentleness to the people in our lives to help them see their goodness. That just really, really matters to me. And I was on an extended journey recently, and I had a couple people mention that they saw that in me, and it was probably the best compliment, or in the category of the best compliment I'd ever received. is to have people tell me that they were seeing that thing kind of spontaneously. So I would say that's way up on top. And if I had to pick one more, I would say, gosh, I got a bunch more. I'm going to give you two more. I'm going to say community, connecting people together with others. And then I would say, lastly, though there's a bunch more, I would say something around adventure, something around kind of, it sounds trite, but, trying to live life on the edge a little bit. Yeah, those would be three for me.
Wow. If those are your values, then I see you as a pretty authentic person.
Well, thank you, son. That's really good. That's really nice. I appreciate that. I mean, I know we're not throwing these back and forth this way, but I really, really want to know how you would answer that question as well. What would be a few of your core values, do you think?
Yeah. Greed and power.
Dude, you are, I got bad news for you, actually. You are not living up to your values.
Oh, shoot.
I just don't see that, man.
Okay. No, just kidding. I'm sure that could be clipped and put on the internet, and
no.
I would lose my career.
I see what you're saying.
But, yeah.
Nash Consulting, greed and power.
Yeah, greed and power, our core values. Trading your managers. Yeah. No. Yeah, so good question. Even within the last couple years, I've kind of better identified what I had as 5 core values, and within the last 6 months, I've kind of drilled those down into 2. And so I kind of have like 2 core values, and then I have like sub values outside of those. So my 2 core values are love and growth.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, you live those.
And both feel like internal and external, meaning internally focusing on showing love to myself. And I, of course, we don't always succeed at that, as nobody does, but also externally, right? Showing love to others through encouragement, through being there for them, through being gentle. And of course, don't always live up to that as well, but that's why they're guiding lights, and we never stay.
Never make it.
Yeah. And then growth is the same thing for me. It's internally, I want to grow as a human being and always keeping an eye on that. And one thing I want to bring to the world is, helping other people grow as well. So that's how I've kind of thought about those 2 core values.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that was your question that I threw back at you. So can I grab my next question though, anyways?
Go for it.
Not quite so deep. Just, I'm going to give you some parameters for this one, but it's the perfect day, the perfect weekend day. And the parameters for this are, you're not out on an adventure somewhere in the world doing something awesome. You're in your life. Okay. You're in your basic life. And in this case though, no, actually I take that back. That's it. That the only parameter is you're in your basic daily life scenario, but it's the perfect day. What's happening for you throughout the day?
Yeah. Okay. So I can't travel anywhere crazy or anything like that. Okay.
Yeah. Hang around Seattle.
Yeah. Well, I'll frame this by saying I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position that I get to do this perfect Saturday, mini Saturdays out of the year.
Nice.
I think for me, it's quite a simple day. What it looks like for me is waking up pretty early. Something I really love about kind of being up when it still might be dark out and other people aren't up, and just kind of the quietness and stillness in the world. Brushing my teeth, putting my clothes on, walking down. No, I won't go into that much detail. But
yeah, come on, let's.
yeah. No, I think for me it is waking up, making a great cup of coffee, sitting down on my comfortable couch with a blanket on, and just maybe reading for a couple hours, whatever I'm interested in that day. And it is making breakfast with my beautiful wife, Alyssa, and sitting down and eating together and chatting for a bit. And then it's probably doing something outside, moving my body, going for a real nice long run around some of the beautiful parks we have here, going for a bike ride, just getting outside for a few hours, and then probably spending the afternoon getting together with a couple buddies in the area, watching a football game or a basketball game, or going to play a round of golf, and then finish the evening by going out to a good restaurant and then getting a pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream and sitting down on the couch with my wife Alyssa and watching a good show, watching a good
Nice.
movie, and asleep by 10 p.m.
Nice.
So I would say that is my perfect Saturday, and that's exactly how I plan to spend my Saturday coming up.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. What about for you? Perfect Saturday. Same parameters.
It actually, maybe we're got some genes that are inherited or something, because it's so similar. It's early. I like to get up before anyone else. It's some time alone under my blanket with a book and some meditation. And in my perfect day, I've got maybe 2 to 3 hours just alone in the morning. Do a little bit of yoga, stretch my body, then have a really nice coffee time with Christy, and just sit and talk about life and enjoy each other. And this is not a magic day where the time just stands still. I guess I have to move on, because I could do that probably for half the day. But yeah, then get out with my dog or a friend, or go do something physical. For me, it would be more like hiking or something like that. I've been playing pickleball lately, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but I've been meeting some folks in Bellingham and playing pickleball. So something physical, that kind of thing. My perfect day actually also includes, this sounds a little random, meeting somebody, random person, maybe at a coffee shop, and having some connection. Like, somehow, this doesn't happen every day. This doesn't happen every Saturday, but I love those days where you get a little bit of time with someone and you ask a question and there's some kind of depth to the conversation, and maybe you give or receive a little bit of something. I just really like those kind of interactions with strangers. Those are really fun. But yeah, dinner with Christy, or friends and Christy or whatever, and a movie, some popcorn. Yeah. Lovely.
Sounds like a great Saturday. Yeah, we're pretty aligned on that.
Yeah, we are.
Awesome.
Cool.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
I don't know if we've ever talked about this on the podcast, but what is the general story behind Nash Consulting? Like, how did it all start? What were you doing before? What inspired the transition from your previous career to starting Nash Consulting? Like, give us all the gory details here.
Well, not all of them, because that would just take so long and be somewhat boring. But let me tell you the highlights, dude. It was an accident. That's the kind of the big story. It wasn't what I intended. This was definitely. I'm not that guy that maps out your life, maps out life and achieves all the goals. And I'm a little bit more of a kind of walk through the doors that are open and look cool kind of thing, and see where they lead. Hopefully with a little bit of wisdom and judgment. But yeah, I was involved with social work. I was right out of high school, and before or during college, I was working with kids. I was taking kids out, teenagers, kids that were in juvie. I was leading an organization where we would take these kids out mountain climbing and rock climbing and skiing, and pair them up with an adult, and work with their families, and had some other various social work positions that I ended up in leadership roles. During that time, I got a social work degree at the University of Washington. I ended up working in a group home. Christy and I were house parents, and lived in the home with 8 difficult, challenging kids for several years, and ended up directing that program. But partway through that process of directing that program, the board told me that basically this was a money thing, right? They'll give me a raise if I get a master's degree, because it had something to do with the state licensing. I could be bumped up to some level, and so I'd get a raise as the director of this program if I had a master's, as long as the master's had something to do with leading or managing. Plus, they'd pay for half of my master's program. So I thought, well, yeah, that's a win-win. So I found a program that was mostly it was a cool program, but it was also convenient. It fit my schedule really well. And it was about leading and consulting. And within probably the first 10% of that program, I realized, like, I'm home. This is magical. This kind of working with organizations, helping organizations get healthier. I was probably at a point in my life where I was starting to get a little bit burned out in working with families and teenagers. So I was probably ripe for something else, and I just really loved what I was learning. I ended up doing a project with an agency. They let me come in and tinker with them, which I think was crazy, but they let me come in and do some consulting and do some coaching and some training and some research with their organization, and it went really well. And by the time I was done with this 3-year program, I was convinced that I wanted to do this work, and I started doing it moonlighting while I was still doing my other job. I felt like I owed them some time because they had, they paid me, or they, paid for half my program. So I gave them a couple more years, but I was also doing some of this on the side and ended up getting more clients through word of mouth. And one thing led to another. And pretty soon I was just crazy busy, and I didn't even really have to work at it. I didn't do any advertising. So I was just doing too much, and I was having kids, and you were coming along and others were coming along, and it was crazy. And so I decided to make the jump and put out my own shingle and create an organization right about the time you were born. Actually, put out a shingle and called it Nash Consulting, and started having a couple others come in and help. And 30 years later, it is what it is now.
Yeah. Wow. So, when you started doing this work in 1943, was there a lot of other people doing the type of work that you were doing?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot, actually. No, we were having to crank up the old Ford, and then, or the
That's right. Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue, because I really was thinking about asking you this question, which is why this career, Ethan? Why did you choose to go into this work? And I'm following that up with, what do you love about it, and are there things about it that you don't love?
Okay. So starting with, why did I choose this career?
Yeah.
I might forget the other two questions, so we can bring those up later. But why did I start this career? You know what? That is an interesting question, and if I'm being honest, I don't think I exactly know, and I think in general our retrospective rationale for doing things is often off.
Right.
So who knows? Here's what I might guess of why I did this career, or here's how I've thought about it. Well, I mean, I think one factor is just growing up in the family that I grew up in, right? Having a father that was engaged in working with managers, working with leaders. I can recall more than a few conversations at the dinner table of just about leadership, management, emotional IQ. And so I'm certain that had an impact early on. Not only that, but having a, mom that was a teacher who, taught us. We were homeschooled for a while, and just, I know that she had kind of implemented some management or maybe leadership at the time type of education, and so I'm sure that had an impact for sure. I think outside of that, like, I gravitated towards being in management leadership positions, pretty early on. I think, when I was doing sports in high school, got to be captain of some sports teams, and I got to coach some teams later on. In college, my job at a restaurant, I ended up applying and getting a manager position there. Got leadership positions, leading new students coming into campus and doing some work there. My first job out of college, got up into a management position fairly quickly. Eventually got the opportunity to kind of start a new division for us and got to lead a team there. And so I think I was just really interested in the idea of building teams, getting people to work well with each other. And I think somewhere along the line, I think I recognized that how do I put this? Maybe my talent was more in the area of, I guess, yeah, I felt like my talent was in the area of developing other people,
Right.
and just realizing that I had a knack for making connections with others and helping people grow, helping teams grow. I also experienced a really, really bad manager. I will say this, I experienced a really awesome manager and a really bad manager, and in the same company that I was working for.
Wow.
And just the juxtaposition between the two put a light bulb on my hand, light bulb in my head of like the difference between having a bad manager and a good manager has an inordinate impact on one's well-being, on one's life.
Right.
And so I think at that point I was like, hey, my dad's doing this type of work. This works actually. Now I really get it of why it's super important.
Right.
And the stars aligned, the opportunities were right, and came on board with you. Turned out I really like this work. I like working with groups, and I guess that's the best I got.
And you're great at it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
My question is, what is the most important lesson you've learned in the last 10 years?
That's actually a really hard question.
It's very hard.
The most important lesson in the last 10 years. So many things swirling, and I'm not going to choose the right answer because I don't know what the right answer is. I will choose the one that just hits me first, and it had something to do with. So there's a phrase that's roughly translated from Buddhism, and it goes, "Enough is a feast," and it's a phrase that has really resonated with me, especially in the last couple of years. It's a phrase that has meant a lot, and the meaning of it has grown and expanded for me. I've just moved into what I'm considering my third of life, and asking questions around what that's going to look like, and so I've been doing a lot of processing about that, and one of probably the theme for me of this third is enough is a feast. And I guess it's the idea that it's more than the idea that I have enough. That starts there, of course. I have enough, right? I have enough. I'm enough. The things in my life, I have enough things for sure, in terms of I don't need more money or more things. I have enough friends, but it's actually more than that. It's a feast. Like it's something to feast on. Like I don't have to go looking at anyone else's feast. I don't have to be jealous about anybody else's life who has more money or who has more friends or is doing that really cool thing or shows that great career. My life is chock full of riches, and to the point where I won't even live long enough to really be able to appreciate everything that I have in terms of the beauty of the people in my life and the things I get to do. And I think I've always struggled somewhat with comparison and seeing other people's the luck that other people have or the cool things in their lives and wishing I had that. And it's been really nice to just give all that up and just realize, no, I've just got all these riches. It's like sitting at a table that's a feast. And then applying that to myself. I've got more than enough inside of me as well. So that's That's a lesson that I'm learning, I would say. But it's probably one of the biggest lessons, the most important lessons that I've ever tried to get my head around. So
Yeah. Yeah. When you say you're still learning that, you mean it's still a struggle, it's still a challenge to remember that you do have enough, or what do you mean by that?
yeah, I will still feel the pull of oh man, I wished I would have chosen that life over there, or I wished I would have lived in that place, or how
Mm.
come that guy has so many friends? I can just see that pull sometimes, but it's been refreshingly easy, I would say, in comparison to maybe
Mm.
previous decades, to be able to just pretty quickly go not just go, oh wait, I have enough, but to go that one step further into, oh my gosh, enough is a feast.
Mm.
I've got so much. And so that sense
Yeah.
of joy or contentment that can kind of take over at that point is really a nice place to call home.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. You have a good life.
I have a great life.
Mm.
I wanted to ask you about Alyssa.
Okay.
She is an amazing, well, to me, daughter-in-law. I just love her to pieces. I guess I would love to hear you tell me what are two or three of the things that you just love about Alyssa.
Hmm. Well, it's a bit of a personal question, don't you think?
It sure is.
Okay. Yeah. Where do I start with that? Okay, so the very first thing that comes to mind is that she is I don't even know how to put this into words. It's a weird thing, but she
Hmm.
is extremely interested in whatever is happening. If you were, to just meet her, you might not necessarily like pick that up, right? Because she can, initially be a little bit more reserved and,
Mhm.
you know, might not be the first person to ask a whole bunch of questions or something like that. But as you get to know her, I find that doesn't matter what I'm sharing, doesn't matter what I'm talking about, like she is just interested. Like
Yeah.
she is just like, you know, wants to know about it. Even after the fact, she'll say something like, "Hey, I know I didn't have a lot of questions when you were sharing that thing, but like that was like I love I loved what you shared, right? I found it like super interesting." And she just has this almost, I guess how I would put it is like a childlike curiosity that
Absolutely.
she has about the world. Um and there's not really anything that seems to bore her. Like
Yes.
it's just really cool and really refreshing and reminds me that like yeah, most anything and everything can be interesting if you look at it deep enough.
Yes. Hey,
So I
dude, I
just
want to
really
I
appreciate
want to
that.
interrupt you about that. I just got to tell you, I drove her to Plain from Seattle one day. You might remember that, and
Mhm.
I couldn't believe it. By the time I got home and thought back on that journey, I I ended up telling her about my entire childhood and my religious background and why I changed that, my belief system and all these things that I had no idea I would ever be talking to her about. And it was because
Yeah.
she just asked me the most, not like prying personal either. She asked me questions that made me feel heard, and she was so curious. And then a year later, she would remember something that I had said from
Yeah.
that conversation.
That's her. That's
Yeah.
her. Yeah, so you shared all about how you left Scientology? I didn't realize you were you
Yep.
were
Told her the whole
open about
story.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And about the aliens and
Mhm.
everything. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. That is interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind, and I'll say the second thing, not that this is the second most important thing that I love about her, but one thing that I really appreciate about her is that she is extremely good at explaining at explaining things in a very understandable way, and it's not going to make any sense unless you know her or talk to her a lot. But basically, like so the other day she'll explain she was explaining something that has to do with biology that has to happen with the body, but basically she created characters for all the different parts of the body, like all the different cells and things like that. And she would have these, as she was explaining it, she was having the white blood cells talk to the red blood cells, and they were having a conversation with each other about how they're going to interact with each other. And she like has this way of just making something that could be very boring really entertaining to listen to, because I don't even know how to say the word. She like anamorphosizes and she, you know what I'm trying to say, like she makes a person out of things and has them talk to
Right.
each other. And I don't know, this is probably not making
Yes.
any sense
No,
as I'm
totally.
explaining this, but she has a way of explaining anything that can be actually really entertaining,
That's
so it
awesome.
makes for good dinner table conversations.
That's great.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Mm.
My turn to ask a question to you. Well, so you mentioned earlier that you are kind of in this, what did you say? This third chapter of your life. Is that how
Third,
you
third.
put it?
Yep. Third. Yep.
Your third. So, first off, what does that mean to you? Like what is the third? And like what do you envision this third looks like for you? What do you want out of this?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I mean, the third is kind of the idea of I just turned 60, and that's the first 30 years and the second 30 years, and I'm hoping I have the other 30 years, right? So I'm in my last third, and I I I created a little bit of a math formula to figure out where somebody is in their week, if the week was if their week, if their lifetime was juxtaposed onto a onto a week on the calendar, right? So you're born
Hmm.
Monday morning at 12:01, and let's say and then you die Sunday night at midnight, and you map your lifespan onto that. I'm at I'm at roughly Friday night at maybe 10 p.m. ish in my week. So I've got the weekend, which is really cool, and I've been really thinking about what that means. I have a weekend. It's the only weekend I get, and what do I want that to look like? And I'm in the middle of Friday night right now, which is awesome. Of course, most of us love Friday nights, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to have a great Friday night, which is, lots of cool things. Uh, in fact, I think I'm doing a good Friday night because I'm doing a lot of cool new things, and some things are changing and whatever. But I guess for the weekend, I'm thinking about I don't want to work as hard, which is true for most of us, right? On a weekend, I want to, I want to have more free time and more leisure. But I don't want to lay on the couch either. I'm not going to lay on a beach. I'm gonna be active. I want to be in people's lives. Um, I've been toying a lot lately with what it would look like to almost full circle back to from organizations to maybe people again. I like I said, I did a lot of social work and worked with families and individuals. Spent the last 30 years working with organizations. I'm wondering what it would look like to help people heal, individual people heal in some way. So I've
Mm.
been kind of playing with some ideas and some looking at some courses, and so maybe that might be what the third looks like is spending more time in some version of helping people heal in their
Mm.
lives. But yeah, some play, some travel. I've coined this next phase of life, the years of freedom. I'm going to call this freedom, and that includes maybe freedom from some old hangups and some being too hard on myself or having super high expectations, but also maybe freedom to experiment and try some new things. And But yeah, it's kind of a random answer, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a whole weekend. You can do still a fair amount in a whole weekend.
that's exactly right. It's a long weekend too. It's years. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I've got lots of time.
Beautiful.
Hey,
Yeah.
what do people like about being friends with you, Ethan? Like why are people attracted to you? Why do people like hanging out with you?
Oh, I don't know. Why don't you ask my one friend I have?
And honestly, I could answer that for you, but just because I see these things and I talk to people, but
Yeah.
yeah, you got people like you. People really like hanging out with you, and I'm wondering if you know why.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I've ever like consciously thought about why I have friends and why they
It's a
keep
hard
hanging
question.
out with me. Well, maybe I'll ask you in a second why you think I have friends. I this is always a weird. I shouldn't say it's always a weird question to answer because I don't answer this question ever.
Ever, right?
Weird thing to think about. I mean, I think that I do my best. This is also something I've learned through Alyssa, but I think I do my best to be curious about people,
Hmm.
curious about my friends, asking them genuine questions and kind of going below the surface.
Hmm.
How are you actually feeling about life? How are you feeling about your job? What was it like growing up with, four brothers or what, whatever it might be. And I think that might be one reason people like me. I find that a lot of relationships, friend relationships, especially if I'm being honest, with, you know, male relationships, men, they don't necessarily go super deep, right? And so I think I kind of bring that to the table,
Hmm.
and everybody desires at the end of the day to talk about deep things, I
Right,
believe.
right.
And so I think that's why people keep hanging around me. I think the other thing is that I am just weird and random and say just crazy things for the sake of getting a laugh, and I think
Hmm.
that helps.
Absolutely.
I think
Yep.
at least for the right people, I think they appreciate that they never know what they're going to get from me and what I might say next.
Yep.
And uh, so
Yeah.
those are a couple of reasons.
Those are great.
You know,
You know, I sorry, you were to say
no,
yeah.
those are the only two reasons I think.
That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I I have a belief that I think it'd be really cool if every human could answer that question. I think it's really important that we can answer
Hmm.
that. And I
Yeah.
would, if you don't mind, can I tell you why I think people like to hang out with you?
Yeah. And then I want to
Yeah.
ask you why people hang out with you.
No, no, I'm not going there.
Okay.
But for you, I would say you actually got the first two I was going to say. I have three, but
Hmm.
in a sense, the first one was about you having you. Well, I was just going to say people know you care, and I think people know you care because you ask and you're curious and you want to know what's going on. And I know from just talking to you, you and I both don't love you know too much small talk. We want to get a little deeper
Yeah.
than that, and I think you're really good at bringing people to that deeper level where they can talk about what's true for them. So I think people feel seen by you and cared about by you. Number two, it's that you said it perfectly. You just freaking say the most bizarre stuff and you surprise people. And it's really fun to be around somebody who's going to like left field that weird statement or say that thing that we were all thinking that nobody would actually say, but then Ethan says it and we're all like, "Oh my gosh, he said the thing." And
Yeah.
so that yeah,
Whoopsies.
those are yeah. And the last thing I say is that you're just really an interesting human. Like you just have really great you're smart and you have great interests and you do really cool things, and so it's just kind of entertaining to not because you're just not just because you're funny, but because you just have a really cool take on life and you do some really cool things. So I just think you're really interesting.
Hmm. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you were saying that I think it's extremely healthy for everybody to think about why people
Hmm.
like them and why they
Hmm.
have friends. Um,
Hmm.
that's cool. What about you? Why do people like you? Like I mean, I know why I like you. But what do you think?
Well, I pay you to like me,
That's right.
right?
As
So
any good parent would.
as any good dad would, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I don't know. Maybe they're similar. I do believe that people know that I care about them. That's that's probably got to be the biggest one for both of us because I think everyone's hungry to be cared about, and
Yeah.
I don't think either one of us pretend. I think we do care about humans in general, and we care about the people in our lives, and I think they know that. So that's really attractive. So I think that's probably true for me. Or I do believe that's true for me. Um,
Mm.
I I make people laugh, and that's another thing I think people really like is to be entertained
Yeah.
and to laugh, etc. And I'll just add, I think I'm generally kind of one of your versions of authentic. We talked about that a while back. I think I am who I am much of the time. Like I don't feel like I spend too much time pretending. And I kind of let it out who I am, and sometimes that gets me in trouble. And I'm definitely a foot and mouth guy, but I think there's something refreshing about hanging out with somebody who is. I think it makes other people comfortable, and they can kind of feel comfortable in their skin around me because I can show up as comfortable in my skin.
Yeah. I that last piece I think um is a major reason. I mean,
Hmm.
all the things you said, but just that people really can show up as who they are around you.
Hmm.
Um, because you show up as who you are around them, right? It's
Hmm.
super refreshing. And obviously I experienced that, but as I see you interacting with other people, it's just like even certain people that I hadn't necessarily seen their true selves when they've interacted with you, I'm like, wow, who is this person? Right? Something clicked for them where they're like, I can be myself around this person.
Wow, cool. That's
I think
great to
it's
hear.
really cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
So you're a little pianist, or you're a pianist, right? Um, you play the piano. That's what that
Yes,
means.
yes,
And
I
you
am a
do so
pianist.
quite well. In fact, let me just say, because you might not say all of this because you're humble and all of that stuff, but you I grew up watching you play the piano in musicals, at Christmas
Mhm.
gatherings. Like, you really are really good.
Well,
Just
thank you.
tell our audience a little bit about your uh, pianist, your little pianist.
Well, I took lessons when I was 7, started taking lessons. I actually asked my parents for lessons and was super motivated for a reason that I don't remember. I just really wanted to learn the piano. Um, I just want to say it since you're hitting around it. I actually had a crazy moment where I came home from my piano lesson and I said, "Mom, Mrs. Majors," that was her name, my piano teacher, "Mrs. Majors called me a penis." And my mom said, "Honey, I think she meant I think she said pianist." So yeah, that was that was an
Glad we got
interesting
that
moment.
cleared up.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So I for whatever reason I just took to it and didn't need a lot of prompting or I practiced and became pretty good. And by the time I got into high school, I moved into playing for the jazz group, and I was involved with church during those years and played a lot for church related things. And I ended up accompanying a couple really good singers who did tours around
Mm.
Canada and Washington. And so I got to travel post high school and do some really cool stuff there. Was even past the church years, like you said, I played for Joseph's Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and The Wizard of Oz and some other musicals, summer music theater, that kind of thing. And
A whole bunch of them.
yeah, did a lot of that stuff. Been with a couple other little jazz groups, and it has. I'm not doing anything now, and it's actually one of those things I'm trying to figure out if there's something in my future. I find that it's a little bit hard for me to spend the hours practicing that I need to practice to be really good if I don't have a thing that I'm shooting for. It feels like I'm not learning this new song or getting better for anything. So I think I need something out there, to kind of practice for. So I hope to get back into it.
So you do hope to have something to perform for.
Yeah,
in the
I would
near
like
future.
I'd like to do something. What I don't want though is I don't want a commitment. So I don't want to be the Friday night guy at the pub or I
Right.
don't want to have a thing I have to go do every weekend. And there's a lot of that I could do in Bellingham. So there definitely are opportunities to get plugged in, but I just don't really want that. So I don't know what I want. I'm still trying to figure that out. But
Yeah. Do you play at all right now? Just occasionally?
just at home. Yeah, just not for anything outside of home right now. So I'm just, when I get bored, I sit and play the piano a bit.
Interesting. Yeah. So it doesn't sound like you have an extremely strong pull towards like really just immersing yourself back in playing like you
No.
did in the past.
No, it's not. I don't feel that yet. Maybe I will when other parts of my life slow down. I'm just not sure.
But you're a creative guy that's always pursuing some sort of creative activity or pursuit. What are you doing right now to scratch that creative itch of yours?
I'm not doing anything. I mean, as you know, I was doing some painting for the few years. We've been moving. I've been traveling. This last couple of years has been busy, so I'm in kind of a hold pattern. I've decided not to commit to anything for a while, and we just moved to Bellingham. I know there's art studios and there's music opportunities, so just keeping my options open right now.
Yeah, very cool. Well,
wait, I would ask you. Wait, are you finishing us, or do we have more
no,
time?
I'm not. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess I have a question for you. Deeper or lighter? I got two options here. Which way do you want to go right now?
Let's do this. Let's do a deeper question, one each, and then we'll finish off with a lighter question.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
All right. So, which of your parents is your favorite? Like your mom or your dad? Who do you like better, and why?
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us for this episode. We will see you for episode 101.
No. Hold on. Okay, did you say deeper and then lighter, or lighter than deeper?
Let's go deep. Let's go deep
okay.
now.
Okay, well, I'm going deep then. If you mean it, I'm going deep. Talk about death. And meaning, like, what happens after we die, and do you think about death? Do you think much about death, and why?
Jesus Christ, man.
I know.
It's extremely macabre of you.
I know. Here we go. Wait. 2-part question. What happens after we die? What happens after we die?
Really? We're going to go there?
Yep.
What happens after we die? Yeah. Wait, so the question was, okay, so what happens after we die? We'll start with that. My answer is I don't know because I've never died before.
Okay, that's fair.
Do I have a guess? Not really.
Okay.
I would say, based on the evidence, maybe nothing, but I am pretty, I guess, agnostic when it comes to that question.
Okay.
So that's what I got for you on that. I don't know.
That's absolutely fair. And the follow-up question is it a good idea for humans to think about their death?
Yes. For most humans. I don't want to generally apply this to everybody. There are certainly human beings that it would be not in their best interest to maybe think about death
Okay.
for their own mental well-being. So I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on the internet. But for me, and for, several people I know in my life, I actually find it extremely beneficial. And it's interesting that you bring this up because working with one of my coaching clients today, not that this is a topic that I bring up with every single coaching client I have, but for the right people, this came up. And the
Really?
idea, I mean, what we were talking about was, just kind of his stress management and, a lot going on at work and these big projects and this, all these problems that are cropping up around these projects. So we started talking about the idea that we are all going to die someday. And in short, the point of this was that are these problems you're facing really that big of a deal when you recognize that you are going to die someday? And the answer was, yeah, no, they're not that big of a deal, right? So I think that's an example of where it can be really, really helpful and where it's been really, really helpful in my life. When I start
Mm,
getting spun around and all uptight about certain problems that have to do with work
mm,
or, that my dog has fleas or a pipe burst in our house, it's like, yeah, you know what? This isn't that big of a deal. Do I really want to spend my time and energy stressing about this when I
mm,
have a finite amount of time left?
mhm.
And not only do I have a finite amount of time left, I don't know when that time's going to run out.
Right.
So I think there's something really powerful about a regular reflection on one's own mortality because that allows you to, I think, better live each day the way that you want to live
Mm,
and to let go of things that are not that important or not that big of a deal in the cosmic scheme of things.
nice.
So, yes, I find meditating on one's death to be one of the most powerful tools that I have for a life well lived personally. And I try to think about it every day, and I probably do think about it every day, multiple times a day.
Wow.
That also allows me to show up probably better to the people I love,
Mm,
just by, you know, hugging somebody, knowing that this might be the last time I hug them.
mm,
Um, and I actually think for most people, I don't know. I think it can be a shame not to remember that you're going to die on a regular basis. Because by remembering that you're going to die, you are just going to approach that day differently.
beautiful.
That was deep.
Yeah.
That was. Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a separate question from this, but do you think about death?
Yeah. Yeah. I believe what you believe. And I've thought about it more in the last few years just because I'm in my third, but there's a Buddhist monk who talked about meditating every morning on kind of visualizing a sword that's hanging over his neck,
Mm.
and it's hanging by a thread, and he
Yeah.
never knows when it's going to fall, and it could fall right now, or it could fall sometime later today, or it could fall in 10 years, and that does for him what you just described. It changes the way you look at people and relationships and life, and I think it allows us to really get, if we're also practicing living in the moment and experiencing the
Mm.
present, we can really get the riches out of that if we know that it could be our last. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Memento mori. Have you heard that before? Memento
I have.
mori? Yeah, Latin phrase meaning remember you must die.
Mm,
That changes the way that you approach life and
right,
your relationships.
right.
Yeah.
Mm,
All right, question for you. Deeper question. maybe not as deep as that. I think that's probably as deep as you can go. So I can't top that. But how do you define success at this point in your life? And how has your definition of success for yourself evolved over the years?
Yeah, great question. Wow, that's really good.
I know.
I know. I'm glad I asked great questions. Yeah, I think success for me in the past probably had more of a I'm taking care of myself and my family financially aspect to it, and
Mm.
success meant living comfortably, at least. I think I always though had another definition of success. I think I would have included having really good community. I think that's part of success. I think probably what's come to the surface in the last decade, maybe more so, is um, success is not for me a kind of a calculation at the end of life of your failures versus your successes, or even the mistakes versus the wins. I think it's about, well, I think it comes back to things like self-compassion. I mean, I think that to me is a marker of success would be living a life where you are just so comfortable with who you are. I think that's a really successful life. I think it would include um, and that includes being able to forgive yourself for things in the past, to appreciate your growth edges, and be okay with those things, and be comfortable with yourself. Because I think that as you grow in that way, as you achieve that, you become just so much more gracious toward other people. You become the kind of person people want to be around, because they can tell that you care. So I guess it's a lot of things that have to do with, I would say a successful life is just authentically loving who you are and loving people around you. And from that, you have these healthy relationships.
Mm.
I'll go back to enough is a feast. I think I would include that in my definition of success, is coming to that place where you really believe that what you have in all, not just materially, of course, but what you have in terms of relationships and who you are and your talents and your life, that it is more than enough, and that you're absolutely content. So
Mm.
contentedness to me is synonymous
Yeah.
with success.
I love that.
So are you watching any good TV, Ethan?
What am I watching recently? Been watching the show Yellowstone, which I
I have
find to
not seen
be,
that. I've heard it's good.
yeah, it's good TV. It's good. It's basically like,
Is that Kevin Costner?
it is, yeah. So you got that
Yeah.
going on. If you've seen Succession, which I know you have, it's like Succession,
Yeah.
but in the country, is how I would put it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that family drama and
Yeah.
dog eat dog, and okay.
Yeah. All of that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And for you, I had a similar question, and I'll widen it for you. But what's a book, podcast, movie that you'd recommend right now, and why?
I am rereading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm.
I read it 1,000 years ago, and I didn't even remember it other than its vague outlines. And it is really, really speaking to me about just the practice of being right now, just washing the dishes and feeling the water and enjoying the feeling, as opposed to living in what I'm going to be doing next. And so it's a relatively simple-ish concept that takes forever to really get. So I've been really enjoying that. That's my morning reading. I'm rereading East of Eden. I'm trying to get back into some of the classics, so that's been really fun. Podcasts, real quick. I'm a big fan of Sam Harris, so Making Sense. I think Ezra Klein is my hero in terms of his intellect and his politics. So I'm really enjoying him, and some Lex Friedman, Tara Brock,
Mm.
some stuff I'm into right now.
Nice. A lot of
Yeah.
options there. All right, let's do one
Yeah.
more. Bonus.
Okay. A bonus
Bonus
question.
question. We each get to ask one more.
All right.
So choose your question wisely because this is really
Okay.
going to be the last one.
Okay, for sure. Last
Maybe ever. Memento mori.
one. Maybe. Oh my
Memento
gosh,
mori.
because you never know, right? The
Yeah.
sword's hanging over our head, right?
Yeah, that's right. So my question for you, actually, it's your turn to ask a question. Then I will.
Oh gosh, so I don't know if you're shooting deep or shallow or what here on this one. So I don't
Whatever.
know.
Just a question that you
Okay,
had that you didn't get to ask.
okay. What? Okay. Why is I know that physical fitness is really important to you. I mean, and you're an amazing man. Like you just did a triathlon and you do all these 50-mile runs. I mean, you're amazing. Why are you so drawn to that as part of your lifestyle? Why is it important to you that you're moving your body so much and in such powerful ways?
Yeah. Good question. I think I would separate just general physical fitness from these more extreme athletic pursuits that I do, right? Like, why I want to stay physically fit. I think that's a different, conversation. I feel better, I burn energy, I can focus, I'm less stressed, I feel more empowered, those type of things. I just feel better. Now, for these more extreme activities, wait, what was your question?
Why
I
do
forgot.
you put your body through those just crazy challenges?
Because I'm insane. I'm literally insane.
Okay.
I'm crazy, man. I I haven't always done these extreme kind of endurance activities. It's been a gradual progression, probably over the last 4 years or so. But I think I started getting into it and doing it because I found that just really long runs or bike rides or whatever was super beneficial for just letting my mind unwind and to think, to problem solve. I really found that some of my best solutions in life came through this kind of repetitive motion through, moving through space and time. So I think that's why I originally started getting into them. But what I found along the way was that these long endurance events, like, I really started to learn. Actually, let me back up for a minute. I realized I was extremely interested in pushing the boundaries of kind of the human experience in many different ways, but this is just one of those ways. And just kind of exploring the outer edges of what's possible for me physically. Honestly, I think it mostly comes down to curiosity of like, hey, what am I capable of? Like, what can I actually push my body to do? And I don't know, I have some excitement around trying to explore what's possible for myself
Hmm.
physically. Um, so I think that's mostly it. Additionally, I would just say that when you are 40 miles into a run, 45 miles into a run, like your brain is a different brain. Um, it is not your brain anymore. It is this just kind of animalistic survival brain. And when you're in that state, it is an altered state for your brain, and it creates. I've had experiences where I basically have just had a better realization about things like what's important in life,
Yeah, cool.
what matters. It's really hard to explain, I think.
Great.
But yeah, I would say the main thing is just pushing my mental and physical limits to see what's possible for myself and what I'm capable of. And that's just, I think it's empowering. It's very empowering for me. And last thing I'll say is on top of that, I just naturally, I have an extreme amount of energy. So I have a lot of it to burn. And so I find that doing long runs, long bike rides, things like that, burns the energy I need to just be calm and focused in the rest of my life. And when I'm not doing that stuff, I'm just like this knot that is not very pleasant to be around. So there you go.
I actually didn't know some of that. A lot of things you said today I didn't know, but this is fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. So last question for you is, what's a hobby or interest that you've always wanted to try but haven't tried yet?
Hang gliding. I have been talking
Hang gliding.
about that since I was 20, and I have signed up for classes, and then things, or something got in the way. It's constant. I not constantly. I would say it's regularly shows up. Once a year, it shows up as a bucket list, and I don't know why I haven't, and I don't think it's an unconscious fear. I mean, I motorcycle, or I climb mountains, or I've done lots of things that are somewhat scary, so I don't think it's that. I love heights. Yeah, so that's a thing that I really want to do. I want to hang glide. And I'll just cheat and throw in another one that's not athletic. I've dabbled in painting, and I want to get into it. So that's something I'd like to even rent a little place, or have some spot, have a little studio where I can just be messy. And what's kept me from really painting is I haven't built a space, or I don't have a space to do that in my life right now. So it's really difficult to make it happen. So I would really like to do that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, go make it happen. You're in your third of life. Now's the time.
It's the weekend.
That's right. That's right. All right, folks. Well, we will wrap it up there. For those of you that have been listeners all along our journey, we really appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. And we have a lot of really cool episodes coming up that we're excited about. So keep tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you're not already. You can do that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you're feeling extra moved after this conversation, leave us a review, which helps other people find this podcast. So we appreciate your support, and we will see you on this podcast soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.